Well, what are those roots? Well, the three roots are the genes, digestion, and inflammation. And if you have chronic health issues, meaning you're sick and you're not getting better, all three of those are at play and all three need to be addressed. And so each of those roots, again, genes, digestion, and inflammation, have their own soil. So that's one model that I teach into that really quickly helps people understand.
Thank you so much for joining us on another awesome episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and a bioenergetics practitioner, and today is brought to you today by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, highly effective approach to optimize wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency, better-based life in your hands and on your wrist. You're going to want to make sure to stick to the very end because, as usual, we've got a giveaway that you can only find out when you stick to the very end. But you're not going to want to miss one word out of my next guest's mouth. I was just looking at her impressive resume before we got on here and all the lists of all the cool podcasts that she's already been on. Like, she's a superstar. I'm already kind of fangirling. So let's give it up for Andrea Nakayama.
Good, Heather. Yay. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Even with the scrambled brain of daylight savings time, like I was
Yes,
really worried about that, but yay, I did it.
we're here.
Awesome. Yes, tell us a little bit about your background, why you got started, why we're talking about this root causes things. I did, peek and read a little bit about the bio, and you have a sad story,
I do
but
have a
most of
sad
us
story.
have a pain to purpose story on why we're in this industry. So yeah, lay it on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Pain to purpose is true, as I know you know personally as well. So for me, that all really started in April of 2000. I was 7 weeks pregnant, and my now late husband was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. So I'm newly pregnant. We hadn't even announced it to anyone, and he is diagnosed with what's called a glioblastoma multiforme. It's a grade 4, very aggressive brain tumor. He was given about 6 months to live at the point of his diagnosis. So that really thrust us into the medical system. And I know when people have contested illnesses like Lyme disease or autoimmunity, sometimes we're like trying to find our way in the medical system. When you have something like an aggressive cancer, you are in the medical system. You are really their property in a specific way. So that thrust into the system really woke me up to a lot of the gaps in our existing medical system. And I say that with a lot of gratitude for what the system did do, but also really being able to recognize all the things it didn't do. So those two initial gaps that we experienced were that Isamu was treated like his diagnosis. So he was
Mm.
treated like a glioblastoma multiforme, not a 32-year-old young man who's about to be a father, and all the other things he was: a husband, a lover, a brother, a son, a software developer, a musician. None of that. He's just a glioblastoma. And that everybody with the same diagnosis is treated the same. There is a protocol. So if I go way back in time to April of 2000, I was not a clinician. I was a person with a real passion for food and a real foodie. And I needed something to do during that time that would help me to feel empowered in the face of something that was so disempowering. And that's where I really started to make some connections. I think of that time as my boot camp. Isamu lived 2.5 years, so beyond his 6 month diagnosis. He died when our son was 19 months old. And it wasn't till years later that I put myself back through years and years and years of school to start a practice and then build a business training other practitioners that I had no idea would go where the Functional Nutrition Alliance has taken me or taken thousands of other people.
I love that you brought up that there is gaps because I tell people that too in my story that when I became a
Yes.
functional practitioner and I cleaned up my diet and was taking all the supplements and doing all the things And there were pieces that were still missing in that puzzle of root cause stuff. And then I kept relapsing. And then I
Yeah.
kept relapsing. And I was like, what's going on? And it wasn't until I started to address those gaps that I finally was able to put Lyme into remission, 5 years ago, reverse two autoimmune diseases. And people still look at me like I'm crazy. Like, are you saying that you can cure dementia and Alzheimer's? I'm like, no, I'm not saying I can cure, but we can definitely prevent it. And we can definitely, there's plenty of people out there who reverse things like cancer, diabetes, dementia. Like, it's not unheard of.
Yes. And we think of this as shifting the terrain, right? So, as a functional medicine nutritionist, it's not my job to play target practice with the diagnosis. So, if I use Isamu as an example, it's not my job to address his brain tumor. It's my job to address the environment, the body in which the brain tumor exists, in which the medical interventions are happening. And in that way, it's an additional scope as opposed to playing like I'm better than with a medical provider. So that is not, I always think of it as the yes and. There is a place for medicine, and there's a place to look at the body into which the medicine is going. And that's a whole different scope of practice that I really love being able to help people see. And that's how we address things like Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. We see the environment and see it more broadly as opposed to narrowly.
So, when you went back to get your training, what was it that you ended up with?
Yeah, so many, many things, and I'm moving a cat out of the
Wants to be part of the
way.
conversation. Hi, kitty.
So my undergraduate degree is in art and design. And so I had to put myself back through many years of school. I was applying to a master's as a registered dietitian. There's only one program in the entire country I would have considered. So I did 5 years while working full time and being a single parent of post-bac, pre-med, prereqs to get all the sciences that I didn't have to get into that program. I got into that program and decided not to move because I didn't want to move my child
Mm.
away from his community and put that burden on him. And so then I started amassing certifications, many certifications in health coaching and nutrition, ultimately have my master's in human nutrition and functional medicine, a lot of studies in functional medicine through the Institute for Functional Medicine. But what I started to do and train was what I also saw, speaking of gaps, missing in a lot of the trainings I was experiencing. And I think because I didn't come from a healthcare background, I was able to see and honor story and human experience a lot more deeply than what I was seeing in a lot of the health and medical training that is still very protocol based. And so I think that is really one of the things that helped to position the work I do and the way I frame it and talk about it through a different lens that became appealing for so many people looking for training that's more patient centered.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, and God bless functional medicine. It was absolutely my step into my healing pathway. But a lot of times, too, I remember when I saw my first functional medicine practitioner, I went home with $300 worth of supplements,
Right,
no explanation on how to
right.
take them, no explanation of where the root cause came from. I was making some really expensive pee,
Yeah.
and nobody was really telling me what, again, looking deeper, what root cause. They were just kind of swapping their allopathic with
Yep.
something a little healthier, which is awesome, less side effects, but it still wasn't, I didn't really feel like was true functional medicine, which is you really got to dig deeper. If your practitioner's not asking you if you're pooping, how you're sleeping, what's your stress level like, what you're eating, and also they're throwing his supplements at you, like run.
Yes. Yeah. And this is the problem, I think, with where functional medicine has gone. So if I go back in time, I started practicing in 2009. I started training other practitioners in 2012. If we look at the three primary tenets of a truly functional practice, we can recognize that there's a therapeutic partnership. And you're speaking to that, Heather. Like, how do I ensure that the person I'm helping is a partner in their care? It's not just me being the God telling them what to do. that there is a root cause thinking. So we're saying, what are the roots here? And I always like to put an S on that. So it's not one root. I think today a lot of people are looking for the root cause. And so they're doing a lot of testing to find the one thing that's going to be, reveal what everything is. And it's multifactorial. Like you said, there's sleep, there's poop, there's stress, there's blood sugar, there's so many things, but also a systems based approach. So a truly functional practice really embraces a therapeutic partnership. It looks for the root causes, and it's a systems based approach. And I see that systems based approach as both systems biology. Full body systems is the name of my training because it is systems biology. We understand the gut's connected to the brain, the liver's connected to the gut, which is connected to the immune system. Everything in the body is connected. But also, how do we understand a systems based approach? Meaning, we are looking through systems to help us address complex cases. So, if we said every case is unique and complex and you have to start from ground zero every single time, that's very overwhelming. Now, every case is unique and every person is an individual. But if we have systems thinking, if we have mental models that help us know how do I collect the information, where do I start, then that really helps us to approach every case while we're learning about the individual, because it's not one and done when we're looking at complex cases like your own and the people you speak to.
Absolutely. When you talk about systems, can you dive deeper into that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so I have three primary systems that I train into. One is the functional nutrition matrix, and I'm going to come back to that because it is modeled off the Institute for Functional Medicine's matrix, but much easier to use and much easier for a patient to understand. But I also have systems ways of thinking. So one of them is what I call three roots, many branches. So one of the ways that I help people understand that there is not one root is that every sign, symptom, or diagnosis that they have is a branch. And if we think about a tree in the middle of a forest or in the middle of a field, that tree, if the leaves are falling off and it's not fall, if the bark on the branches is looking rotten, that's an expression we can understand of something that's happening deeper within. So helping people to understand their signs, their symptoms, their diagnoses. If you're listening to this right now, those are branches. Those are not where we play target practice. Instead, if we really want to shift the expression of those leaves and those branches, where do we go? We go deeper to the trunk, we go deeper to the roots, plural, and then where do those roots live? Those roots live in the soil. And so I see our job in functional nutrition and helping people understand why we're not focusing on the cancer, on the diabetes, on the Hashimoto's. We're focusing on, again, I said, the terrain in which those things exist. In essence, we will be addressing those branches, but we're doing it through a different lens. The doctor may be going right for the branch. We are going for the environment, the terrain, the soil in which those are expressing. I have Hashimoto's. My Hashimoto's, I could say it's in remission. I will say I have Hashimoto's, but it doesn't express because I'm constantly addressing the environment in which those signs, symptoms, and that diagnosis express themselves. So again, it's that shifting of the thinking, and that's a mental model that helps me understand, helps people to understand, well, what are those roots? Well, the three roots, there are many branches, every sign, symptom, or diagnosis, but the three roots are the genes, digestion, and inflammation. And if you have chronic health issues, meaning you're sick and you're not getting better, all three of those are at play and all three need to be addressed. And so each of those roots, again, genes, digestion, and inflammation, have their own soil, and those have factors that we start to address. So that's one model that I teach into that really quickly helps people understand, why are you focusing on my sleep when I'm telling you I have rheumatoid arthritis? Like, why are you looking at my digestion when I'm telling you? And it helps us to understand, bloop, we're flipping this script. We're actually addressing those things, but through a different lens that will ultimately help in many other areas of your life.
Mic drop. Can I get an amen? Like, no, absolutely. I knew this was going to be a lot of fun because we're speaking the same language.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, it is, so right now I'm working for Dr. Jen Simmons, who wrote the book, Smart Women's Guide to Breast Cancer, and who sells it her course. And, everybody is still so focused on the cancer. And, I'm trying to tell them the importance of focusing on all these other things, because
Yes.
if you're just focused on this one thing and leaving out mindset and nervous system regulation,
Correct.
like you're gonna leave a huge percentage of healing off the table, and you're gonna end up
Yes.
relapsing at some point. So
Yes. And
addressing
just to
all the
that
roots.
point, Heather, like if I look at genes, the epigenetic factors, the soil that surrounds the genes, you just said it. It's food, movement, environment, and mindset. And those are the epigenetic factors that influence our genes. Our genes aren't fixed. We have the opportunity to shift their expression. Even if you have a BRCA2 gene, we can shift its expression, and those factors are epigenetic factors that really shift the terrain. So each of the roots in my model has four factors, and those four factors have their own four factors. And there's lots of things we could be focusing on in the time between our doctor's visits, where we as patients actually become better partners in that therapeutic partnership, because we're not just doing what our doctor said, which, like you said, is almost impossible a lot of the time, but we are also taking more ownership of the things that we can do that influence our outcomes.
Absolutely. I love that. We're going to take a really quick break, real quick. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss the second half of this and our giveaway. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The very first day that I wore the device, I slept through the night, which is amazing.
It looks like a little watch, but it's actually a frequency device. It's bioenergetic, so it has this little frequency light situation that goes into your arm, and it pretty much makes an immediate difference.
So there's like a sleep mode. When I go mountain biking, I throw it on an energy booster. Once I'm done mountain biking, I actually switch it to the other mode they have, is pain and relief.
When I'm in a stressful situation and I put it on, it helps me almost immediately. I immediately feel calmer, whether that's a frequency or me knowing that it's working or knowing that it's helping in addition to that.
One of my buddies was like, do not discount this. This is an amazing device. You've got to give it a chance.
It's got so many options. I'm just going to go over, it's like a menu that you can choose. It's so easy to use. You just click on what you like. For example, it's got travel, pain relief, energy boost, allergies.
I really, really love this device. In fact, I have two of them because when one is charging, I want to wear the other because I'm never without it.
It will never give you something when your body doesn't need and it is not natural. That's what I love about the device.
Put it on focus, maybe halfway through the day as I was losing focus. And within about 10 minutes of turning on, I feel like my brain is just like, I'm connected. Like, wow.
Trying all the frequencies and I love it. The one I'm using right now out on my walk is energy. It just energizes me. And I'm finding that I've got more stamina and more energy than I thought I would.
My Nikki helps me sleep better at night and helps me feel less stressed.
I really been enjoying it. So I've noticed my energy's been up. I've been sleeping better.
So the Nikki is one price, and then you pay for the frequency sets separately. So you can get the wellness one, which is awesome. I really do love the new Lyme frequencies so much. It's incredible.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. We are Nikki.com.
Awesome. Welcome back. So yeah, she's totally, singing to the choir here. I absolutely love it. And that's part of the reason why I love working with Dr. Jen as well, is because she's a doctor who gets it and has hired a few, functional practitioners like myself to help implement all those other things that are so needed for healing than just the doctoring part of a diagnosis, right? So yay. Tell us a little bit about the state of chronic illness in our country. Like, why I've got my ideas, but I want to hear it from you. Like, why are so many of our kids, ADHD, overweight, depressed, anxious? Oh my God, everybody's anxious.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know that I could point to one thing, right? There's so many things going on in the world today, the pressures that we're experiencing, the exposures that we have, the way that diet has changed, the way we use technology. There's so many things happening. We can take it back to the shift in the microbiome internally over time for an individual, higher rates of inflammation, epigenetic factors like our food and our water and the air we breathe that are changing things. I just think it's a compounded stress situation that's taking a bigger and a bigger toll. What I find really interesting, Heather, is that we live in the information age. So there's more information available, there's more medical advancements, there's more that we have access to, and yet more people are sick and not getting better. And I think that the human form is bucking against a lot of what is being offered to us as solutions and showing that it can't be contended with through like AI, right? Like we can't just do a diagnosis. We need to really honor the human and the human experience. So I think it's multifactorial why we are here. And I think that it's just going to keep compounding itself because it's not one thing. And the more we try to pin it on one thing, it's the food, it's the technology, we miss all the other things. And more is coming to the surface, whether it's the water or the plastics or so many things. And all we can do is live our best lives without being overwhelmed by protecting ourselves from every little thing.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking the level of toxins that our government has allowed in our water, in our air, in our food, from the mercury in our mouth.
Yes.
It's absolutely, it's deplorable. And
Yes.
I'm so happy to see, doctors like Dr. Will Cole and a couple of Dr. Axe and all those folks who were up there like boycotting Kellogg's, to get the artificial coloring out of their food that they said they were going to like 10 years ago. Because a lot of people don't even realize that like
Right.
the Kellogg's cereal in the United States and the Kellogg's cereal over in the UK are completely different animals. They'll have
Yes.
like 4 ingredients in their cereal. Ours have got like 20, and half of them are chemical, nasty, cancer causing, anxiety causing, and we wonder why our kids can't sit still.
Yes. And there's so many social determinants to health that don't even allow people to have the choices that we might have access to. I like to say health isn't about shopping at Whole Foods or doing all the tests or taking all the supplements. Like there's so much more we could be doing. And how do we understand that level of choice? So we could boycott Kellogg's and we can also not buy Kellogg's, right? Like what are our other options that we have as humans, as consumers, as people making everyday choices? It's quite a it's like I said, multifactorial. There's so much going on that we are exposed to, and the stress is just getting compounded. I have a 24-year-old son, knock on wood, he's healthy, but I know like he would talk about how everybody he knew was on a mental health related drug. Like it was just the norm around him that everybody was taking some kind of drug. The impact on people's bodies and minds is huge, and we're seeing higher rates of autoimmunity among younger and younger folks all the time. It used to be like, oh, it's more women than men. Now we're seeing younger girls. Now we're seeing younger boys. Like it's just on the rise in a way, despite all we have available to us.
Actually, that's a great segue into so many people are struggling to get accurate diagnosis or receive sufficient care. Why do you think that is?
I think that there's a lot going on in the body, and we want that one thing. We want the diagnosis to tell us the answer. And I think what I see so often with people who have chronic health challenges is that there's a cycle there, like a hero's journey, but they're searching and searching and searching for that diagnosis. They might get the diagnosis, but the diagnosis doesn't lead to resolution when it is a chronic health issue, when it is Lyme, when it is autoimmunity, when it is long COVID. Great, you got a diagnosis. Now what? And that leads us back to those three roots, many branches, because you're going to have to focus on the terrain because the diagnosis doesn't give you an answer.
Absolutely. So looking back, hindsight's 2020, when your husband got diagnosed with cancer, knowing what you know now, if you were to look back, can you kind of pinpoint some of those pieces that kind of contributed to his tumor?
I can't say why he got the tumor, right? I mean, I can look to his childhood and look to the environments he grew up in, but there's no guarantee there. I do think I was thinking functionally without having the name for it yet because we were so focused on like how is sugar feeding tumor growth and how do we work on breathing and meditation. Like we were doing all the things because it was such a grave situation, right? Sometimes when we're just not feeling ourselves or our hormones are off, like it's annoying, but the degree isn't like, oh, this is an impending death. Like I am trying to save my life here. That's a different situation where like there's no habit change issues in that situation. It just is, right? Like you're going to do the things, or at least he was, because he was excited to be a father and excited for this next phase of life. So I didn't have the language for functional medicine, functional nutrition, but I think that's what we were doing. What I can look back on, Heather, and wish I had seen then is how to see what was going on in his labs. Like one of my superpowers is looking at serum labs. Like I can see correlations in what's going on in the body now in a way that I did not have any knowledge of at that time. So everything we were reliant on in terms of what was going on in his body was from a medical lens, which is very limited and not as broad as ours might be. And then everything we were doing was just trying to embrace whatever we could do. But I wasn't able to see those connections in the way I can now. But I don't live with a lot of regret, not because I don't wish he was here today, but because I do my work and built my legacy in his honor, in his legacy. And so I just try to pay forward everything that I learned through the experience with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just trying to see if you could correlate like a few
Yeah.
things that might have contributed because a lot of people still don't even realize that that's a thing.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of cancer doctors out there that tell cancer patients it doesn't matter what you eat. Like
Right.
if I had a dime for every time I heard that during the week, like it's absolutely deplorable.
Yes.
So, people still are a little on the brainwash side where it's just in my genes and I'm just unlucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to say with a brain tumor. We've got the blood-brain barrier. I have my hypotheses in terms of, where he was born, where he grew up, what he might have had environmental
Mm.
exposure to, but those are just hypotheses and hard to know for sure. But definitely thinking through the terrain, I do believe extended his life, and that imprint that he had on our son, even though our son, who's now 24, doesn't remember his dad, that imprint was there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, how is it that you typically work with people these days? Are you just training practitioners or do you have your own private practice? Or tell us a little bit about how you work with people.
Yeah, so as my training program grew, I've now trained nearly 9,000 practitioners in over 68 countries. Yeah, big
What?
training. So as that grew, I had to step out of the practice to be, the creator of the program and really build the business. We do have a virtual clinic, so I have a team that sees people individually. I have a few clients that have stayed with me that I continue to see. I always want to keep it fresh. But I have two bodies of my work. There's my work at the Functional Nutrition Alliance, where I'm training practitioners and growing that brand and that business and the awareness of functional nutrition. And then on my personal website, where I'm writing a book and really turning my attention back to the patient, not as a clinician who's working one-on-one with people, but as somebody who's really putting this way of thinking about functional medicine, functional nutrition in our own back pockets, combining that with the practice of narrative medicine. If functional medicine wasn't hard enough to understand, I'm layering a more complicated understanding on top of it, but really combining different ways of thinking that bring us back into our own power when we feel like we've lost it because of a healthcare situation or in the medical system where we feel really, really disempowered, and trying to bring that power back to people through you know, forms that might not feel like the typical forms do. That this isn't about being a disciplined body. This is about being in communication with yourself and understanding yourself.
Can you dive a little deeper on that? Because
Yeah.
I know sometimes, so the beautiful part, the curse and the blessing, right, is we can get this stuff cleaned up and we can become that disciplined body, like you said, but then sometimes we can become too disciplined, which causes stress and a whole nother can of worms. Can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, and this is what I saw a lot in my practice. So in our practice at the Functional Nutrition Alliance, when I was growing it, when I was seeing clients 6 days a week, we really saw the people who were eating free food. Like they were trying to control their symptoms so much through food and through doing the right thing that they limited, and developed conditioned food hypersensitivity. Your body can't do anything. So there's a missing piece there that I just want to mention. And then I want to talk about this through the matrix. But there's a missing piece there, which is actually healing the body. So when we become so disciplined and we're controlling things, first of all, when we don't eat food of a variety of a certain sort, we're introducing deficiencies into our body that could manifest as other signs and symptoms and diagnoses. So I really like to believe, and I say I don't subscribe to any one dietary theory. It's what's right for that individual at that period of time. And if it's in a healing period of time, it may be more restricted. Our goal is for the diet to be as vast as it can possibly be for that individual at that period of time. And so that's what I really believe in. Does that mean I don't eat certain foods? Absolutely. I still don't eat those foods, but they're not foods that are introducing deficiencies into my system, nutrient deficiencies, or if they are, I'm addressing them. So I just feel like, first of all, people start to introduce new symptoms when they're so disciplined, whether that's through stress or stress on the body that could be introduced. And there's a lot of stress in trying to uphold and do the right thing all the time. I want to kind of back this out to the functional nutrition matrix. So in the functional nutrition matrix, which like I said, is modeled after the Institute for Functional Medicine's matrix, my adaptation with their permission for a different audience, there are 3 sections, and I call those sections the story, the soup, and the skill. The soup is that full body systems, that systems biology, the gut and the brain, the inflammation, the oxidative stress, the energy production, all the things happening in our body. And we can get very, very fixated on what's wrong with me. Where do I label this thing that is wrong with me? And that's the soup, because everything's connected. It's not stew, it's a soup. Everything in the body is connected. The skill is the right side of the matrix. That's sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, relationships and networks, stress and resilience. There's all those areas that influence our soup. They do have a place. And what I found in my years of practicing functional medicine nutrition is that people got very fixated on the soup, what's wrong with me, and on the skill, what do I do about it? What's the right workout? What do I have to do with my sleep? Where's my red light therapy? What do I do? What are all the skills I need to fix myself? What I found was really missing from that equation is the third part of the matrix, which is the story. And so the story in our matrix is, in functional medicine, what we call the ATMs, the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators. And I believe there's a lot of gold in understanding how our story led us to where we are, that has a lot of unlocks in how we do self-care, that if we ignore it, we're not recognizing key associations. So knowing the triggers through our lives, what led me to this place that I am today, knowing our antecedents, what I come into the world with, like what are my genes telling me, whether I know them on a piece of paper, which I'm not a big fan of, or like I just know my family history if I happen to know, but also what are my mediators? What makes me feel better? What makes me feel worse? How do I become an agent of my mediators? What makes me feel better? What makes me feel worse? And I see, as if I'm to put myself in the clinician role, my job is to help people understand more of their mediators. So their mediators are on that skill section of the matrix. But once I know those, I actually get to make risk reward decisions all the time. You know what? I don't drink. It doesn't make me feel good. There's an impact the next day that's not worth it to me. But tonight, I'm out with my son. We're having sushi. I want to have a little sake. That's a risk reward decision for me, right? Like, then I am in my power as opposed to being a bad girl or controlling it too much or being super disciplined. So I think there's a different relationship that when we embrace our story, unlocks so much of our health journey and helps us make connections that become more clear and helps us be more compassionate with ourselves as people who need to heal.
Absolutely. What a beautiful way to end. And on that note, this is the shameless plug time of the show. So where can people find more information if they want to start to do the training and become the amazing, type of practitioner that you are putting through your courses?
Oh, thank you. Well, if you head over to andreanakayama.com, so just my name and Instagram on the web, that's my personal website, but it will lead you back to the Functional Nutrition Alliance, to my previously produced podcast, to all the things that I'm offering. But that's one-stop shopping, andreanakayama.com, all the A's all throughout.
Yeah, we'll make sure, because if you can't spell like I can't, we'll make sure to have that in the show notes. Also, make sure to visit wearenikki.com/podcast, enter in BioBeats to get 10% off. And because we really love our customers and the way we love to show appreciation is we give away a free Nikki device plus a wellness set of frequencies that's valued at $598 on every episode. So make sure to go to the show notes and enter in to win your free Nikki. And stay tuned. Thanks for everybody and have a healthy day.
Hey there, my name is Jer. I'm an art director and a graphic designer. My wife and I have 2 grown sons. Both are starting their young careers apprenticing in their fields of passion. And then there's our favorite son, our 7-year-old puppy, Andre. Andre has been the best addition to our family in the last decade. When the pandemic hit 3 years ago, my career was turned upside down. I started working as a contractor for a few clients and working from home. I haven't looked back since. My schedule with work is hectic and often stressful. I have 2 ways of dealing with my stress and anxiety. Number 1 is my dog Andre, and number 2 is my bioenergetic wearable, Nikki. When I need help with my work-life balance, I use my Nikki in stress and anxiety mode. And I have a puppy break. My Nikki touchscreen watch is pretty easy to use. It's cool that I can dial up individual frequency sets. When Andre is ready to go, I tap energy. I've been a longtime hockey coach and play in goal twice a week myself. I find the pain mode has reduced the inflammation in my legs in particular. The nighttime mode has been great. I charge my Nikki every other day at my desk. I've been wearing this cool tech for almost a year. On the latest update, I see there are some new frequency bundles. There's morning, afternoon, evening. on top of nighttime.
Nikki puts a personal wellness center in your hands and on your wrist. Be better. Do better. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.